Shalom, Laha Alahayim, Nawathan, Kal Halalim, La Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash. Peace to the gods, giving all praises to Yahweh in the name of his son, Yahweh Shai, in the name of the Holy Spirit. Double honors unto the elder bishops, the head elders, the elder bishops, and the elder apostles, Salakia, of Great Millstone GMS who do rule well. Salutations and blessings upon the hopeful elect scattered abroad. It's your brothers Hazapanya, Banyamyan, and the sons of Yasha Allah camp out here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with a quick hit through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, Lord willing, is edifying. As you can see, I'm doing a response video, and it started off great, man. And you gotta love the the rulership, the edification, all right, from the GMS Akim, specifically the elders, as Elder Arayala of the GMS Dallas camp in your far left is spearheading this class, man. And I've actually met the Elder Arayala, and I've met a lot of the Dallas brothers and a couple of the Houston brothers over the summer, man. Some Yapa Akim, Lord willing, we all eventually see each other on them chariots. But I thought this was spiritual because this past week, this is all that has been coming to mind. Because I've been seeing more and more news articles, referring to this whole China thing. And these Moabites really think that they're going to get next. All right. So I'm going to let some of this play, right? And then I'm going to get some scripture just to add on to what he's going. And it's crazy because I was looking for a precept. I did a video and one of the brothers on a comment board put it up, and they actually starting off with the same precept, so I just thought that was beautiful. So we're going to get it in. I'm going to just add to it. Follow these brothers. All right. This is off of the GMS Houston Evangelist channel, but it was also on GMS Spiritual Temple. All right. So on and so forth. Subscribe, watch their videos, and be consistently edified. Let's get it.
To everybody. So when you read scripture, Asia, thou art partaker of the hope of Babylon and the glory of her person. You see how because of the relationship, the trade deficit that America and the West have with China, basically now China is the number 2 economy in the world. Really, they're kind of the number 1 economy, right? And the United States allows China to do what they do. Why? Because we just sit back and chill. Number 1 importer, because that's right. But number 1, we buy all their goods, cheap goods. Nike and all these other top level corporations, they send their labor over there, and so American corporations are able to thrive off Chinese labor and Chinese work. Anybody have any points on that? Okay.
This is back in 2nd Ezra, chapter 15, verse 47. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her.
Right. You have made yourself like unto her. Now you've taken on their mindset, you've taken on the economy, you've taken on basically the whole idealism of capitalism. You've infused, because China is known as this communist country, but they infused themselves with this whole idea of capitalism, that they thrive. So woe unto you. Woe unto you with the way to you. Now what you see with China is that they're buying land and buying up places over in South America, over in Africa, because they want to transport what they've done there in China to those different nations, and they want to become a consumerist nation like America. It is going to be a failure for them.
Just a question: haven't they bought areas of Mexico as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're doing the same thing that America did in China, and now China is doing that. Now that they got a bag, well, we're going to run this model in Mexico, Central, South America, and in the Caribbean, and in Africa, right? which is utilize cheap laborers, raw goods and materials, set up the foundation for everything. Hey, show me one, bro. All out on you. Set up the foundation. Everybody get up American and African and setting up that hub, right? So when we read here in verse 47, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, boy, what if you read?
Come. This is back in 2nd Ezra chapter 15, continuing on in verse 47. I'm just reading verse 47 again.
Mm-hmm.
Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please the glory in thy lovers, which have
so everybody that's coming in and dealing with you. So now in the news, there's all this propaganda about how China and Russia and the BRICS nations are going to take over the U.S. dollar and they're going to do all this shit. But the scriptures is telling you they're going to go down with America. They're going to go down with Babylon the Great. They're not going to be able to, this enterprise that they're partaking of is going to fail right along with America and Esau. Okay? Go ahead. And their lovers are the ones who work with them.
I got the lovers.
Go ahead, Chad.
Ready for that?
You are in Revelation 18?
Yep.
Wait. We're going to come to that next. Let's finish this and then we're going to get into Revelation 18.
God.
Right. Go ahead.
Continuing on in verse 47, it says, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her, that is hated in all her works and inventions.
Now, when you read in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, it talks about how the nation's going to have a taunting proverbs and byword against this evil nation that basically sucks everything in, talking about Babylon and Great, right? So now you have followed her, which is hated in her works, the Babylon the Great. So what do you think is going to happen with China and all these BRICS nations who are basically duplicating the Edomite capitalistic model? They're going to be hated too. They're doing the same type of, the BRICS banks, the BRICS, they're not doing anything different than what the SWIFT, BIS banks and different European or Edomite central banks are doing. They're doing the same thing. They're putting out predatory loans, get these nations caught up in them, and they're setting the same standards as the International Monetary Fund and all those other things.
Right. And I think I might leave on that point, and then we're going to go to another video because I want y'all to understand everything that he just said. Lord willing, Jake got a short attention span, but that's pretty much the point. All right. So as you read in 2nd Esdras, to partake of the hope of Babylon, what's the hope of Babylon? To have full control over everybody. All right. And how they do that, all right, is from the people that rule the international banking families. And how do they try to rule and get control over the people? Starting off with what the scriptures call as usury or surety, which we know now as interest, which is nothing but credit or debt. Okay. So I'm going to go to the book of Psalms chapter 83, and I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, keep that not thou silence, O power. Hold not thy peace and be not still, O power. And that's the spirit we're supposed to be in. All right. We supposed to be praying without ceasing. All right. Giving fervent prayer, asking petitions unto the Heavenly Father through his son, Yahweh Shai, who is granting, all right, the hope for the elect, hearing of the prayers, all right, of the elect of Israel. Verse 2, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thine head. You see, so we're saying that, the heathen, they're getting more and more proud. All right. And we know that what you say, Father, through your word, that pride cometh before a big fall. So when you going to make them fall, Father? You see? Verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. And part of this crafty counsel is what he just said, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, this whole SWIFT messaging system, this new ISO 222 standardization of certain regulated cryptocurrencies that will eventually be used as a technology for the central bank digital currencies, the coming RFID chips, so on and so forth. All right. They have consulted against our hidden ones. You see what I'm saying? They basically tried to hide us. As it goes on to read in verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. The name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And remember, Israel, the name actually means Prince of Power. Yashar Allah. Yah, he, Shar, Prince, Allah. Power. All right? So he wants us to not be a prince of power. What got us not to be a prince of power, a son of God in the first place? By not keeping the laws, man. You see, so the more oppression that they do, the more that they try to usurp the authority as the Most High, sit in the seat of the Most High. You see, they are constantly basically making us go off. All right. How many times we know, and in our spirit, we want to keep the Shabbat. All right. But with Esau, all right, he makes it where you got to work in order to take care of certain things because of the boundaries that they have when it comes to this bullshit ass Federal Reserve note and bills. You see what I'm saying? So now as we go down, verse 5, for they have consulted together with one consent. You see, that's what he was saying. All right. It's house against house. Right now, kingdom against kingdom, as Yahweh shall prophesy, because it's which country actually wants to take the center point of the New World Order. That was the article that I was referring to a couple minutes ago. A top EU European Union official said that China wants to be at the center of the New World Order. You see, and that this is how you know even China and Russia to a certain point that they're together because they have a similar enemy. All right, which is the West, which is NATO. All right. But even Russia said, or Putin said not too long ago, that there has to be a new world order. And he basically thinks that he wants to be in the center point of it. You see? Because at the end of the day, all right, they are power struck over the imagination of how much power, wealth, and control one can have by economically and financially putting people in digital concentration camps with this mark of the beast. You see? So here's the point, verse 6. All right. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes. All right. So I thought Moab was second, but it's really third. So we know the first ones that come together was the Edomites. So these Edomites came together with the Ishmaelites, which is now known as your so-called Arab. All right. But when you go into the book of Obadiah, let's go to the book of Obadiah real quick. And then we're going to get that last video and close it out. This is Obadiah chapter 1, verse 7, and it reads, all the men of thy confederacy. All right. Notice how back in Psalms 83, verse 5, it says, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. Against who? Against the Israelites. All right. So back in Obadiah chapter 1, verse 7, all the men of thy confederacy. See, so it's these same confederate nations is the ones that's confederate with Esau. That's why the tabernacles of Edom. All right. And notice it said tabernacles, houses. All right. And you had, which would be different tribes. Okay. And the top tabernacle would be Amalek, your small hatters, your 48ers, your you wish. They was us people. All right. Back in Obadiah 1 and 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to thy border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. You see? So China, Saudi Arabia, remember Saudi Arabia with OPEC plus nations, and they're the ones that are the top nation that run the oil cartel of all those different nations. They said in what, 1971, that, yeah, we'll take everybody else's currencies, but you have to convert it to the US dollar. And they made a pact with Esau, which was Nixon and Babylon, America. All right. And this is what made the USD, Federal Reserve Note, the global currency. All right. Just to have think tanks and plan over a period of time to get themselves rich to a point where now they could maneuver, make a left turn, make a detour. All right. Join the side that they feel like is the winning side. You see? And the same thing with Moab now, because as Elder Arayala was bringing out, all right, that, everybody, her lovers, those that partaked in, with Asia and things of that nation. And then you got to remember too, because I remember Apostle Rhymelab said, we always refer this to China, but Asia is a broad place with many different nations. All right. And you got to remember the BRICS is pretty much a lot of them nations is that Eurasian landmass. All right. Because Russia is mostly in Asia. Only a sliver from Moscow east or west, all right, is in Europe, according to their own maps and things of that nature. And I actually did the etymology of Asia. All right, it goes back to Greek, which goes back to Akkadian, which basically means to rise. Okay, which is referring back to the sun, the land of the sunrise and shit. And that's how it kind of goes back to Akkadian, because Akkad was one of the first cities built by Nimrod in the Assyrio-Babylonian Mesopotamian area. Okay, so that was the original point of that whole Asia, which goes back to Asu. Okay, and it's kind of similar to in Kemet, they call, I think, the sun Set, Offset, all right, something like that. All right, so it's basically, the east, because the sunrise in the east. So as to prove what the elders in the Akim is saying, let's go to see if I can find, the money GPS, right? And this was a big one. Boom. Only 4 minutes.
Today we're going to talk about a fascinating development in global finance. Did you know that China is becoming the lender of last resort for countries that are already heavily indebted to them?
See, remember in Proverbs it says, he that is, matter of fact, let's just find it. Let's just find it so I don't butcher it. All right, let's go to the book of Proverbs. Chapter 22, verse 7. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 7. And it reads, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So he's just saying that China is now the major lender, all right, of the whole world. Like, for instance, I remember when Akon became, they say he's not it was $1 billion project. Well, he made a lot of money, but it was brokered by China. He got a credit line from the Moabites to bring electricity to all these dark places in the Hamite regions, all right, of West and Central Africa, Northwest, Central, West Africa, whatever. And it was $1 billion project. And, me being Banyamyan, Benjamin, all right, specifically the island of Jamaica, China owned Jamaica, all right, from just having the ear, to the street, so to speak, okay? And how was this happening is because just like in Second Esdras, just like Elder Ariala said, and how they follow after Babylon. And how did Babylon get to this point? Because of the international banking families, the Rothschilds, money lending model. So this is why it says China's debt trap, billions of loans, because the borrower is servant unto the lender. Okay.
Let's dive in to find out more. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. China's Belt and Road Initiative has led them to provide millions of dollars in emergency loans to countries in crisis, from Sri Lanka to Turkey. With this, they've overtaken the United States to become one of the largest lenders in the world. But there's a catch. These loans are mostly given to low and middle income countries that are part of the BRI and already owe China huge debts. Aid Data is a US-based research institute. They found that China focuses on countries with geopolitical significance or abundant natural resources. That's the big one. Many of these countries have been borrowing from Beijing for years to fund infrastructure and other projects.
Right, and that's why I brought out Jamaica, because I think Jamaica is a 100-mile island, and there's China built the highway, all right, from there. And I'm not mistaken, it might be even in Panama too, because it was like a 2.5-hour drive from Ciudad de Panama, Panama City, to Colón, which Colón is the major port city on the Atlantic side, and Ciudad de Panama is the capital on the Pacific side. And now it's like some 30 or 45-minute drive from each rather than driving on road. So that's what China's doing. Because remember, they can build skyscrapers, they can build bridges, they can build roads in small amounts of time. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good bridge or a good road or whatever it may be, but they do it very, very quickly. All right.
They suggest that China has developed a system of bailouts on the Belt and Road to help countries avoid default while still servicing their BRI debts. This has been a little bit interesting for the world, and I've seen some analysts talk about it. I've got some more to share here. And get this, China has effectively replaced the US and is quickly catching up with the IMF in bailing out indebted low and middle income countries. They're providing $240 billion in emergency financing in recent years. In 2021 alone, China gave $40 billion in such loans, while the IMF lent $68 billion to similar nations. This underscores China's growing status as an economic superpower. However, there's a downside. Many countries are struggling to repay their debts due to the slowing economy and rising interest rates. And this is where it becomes interesting. One reason, China's bailouts aren't cheap. China's central bank charges relatively high interest rates to countries like Pakistan, Laos, Nigeria, and Suriname. In fact, they charge 5% interest rates for emergency credit to middle-income countries in distress, compared to the 2% that the IMF rescue loans. Interestingly, the US Treasury charged almost the same interest rate as China, 4.8%, when they made rescue loans to middle-income countries in the 1990s through 2002. US officials have accused China of engaging in debt trap diplomacy, saddling countries with excessive debt for construction projects carried out by Chinese companies. And that's the thing, because we don't necessarily know what they're trying to achieve, and we can only speculate, right?
Nah, we
What's
know.
more, China's
what they're
loans
trying to
are
do.
mainly given to middle-income countries that are important to their banking sector. Low-income countries receive little to no new money and instead are offered debt restructuring, according to the study. Beijing is ultimately trying to rescue its own banks, and that's why it's got into the risky business of international bailout lending. Now, we don't know, and we're looking at this from afar, but I do find it interesting and think that what's coming here is a new way that we didn't necessarily see before. China didn't really do this before, and now today they seem to be moving to the forefront of it. Lastly, China's emergency lending is often in its own currency, the renminbi, furthering its efforts to limit reliance on the US dollar as the go-to global currency. When borrowing renminbi from China's central bank through these swap agreements that they have, indebted countries keep the renminbi in their central reserves while spending their dollars. It really is interesting, doesn't it? The way that they're able to do this, some say intentionally. So in summary, when we look at it, China's becoming the lender of last resort. They've got these high interest rates and they focus on middle income countries. According to some, their lending practices may pose risks for both the indebted nations and the global economy, as well as the fact that at the same time, their increasing influence in international finance can't be ignored. They're expanding beyond this. They've got the BRICS nations. They've got all these new alliances that they just didn't have even 10 years ago, and they're expanding rapidly. So all of this together, it is interesting, to say the least. And that's the end of that. I hope you appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.
Right. So that's pretty much the point. All right. So remember, the scriptures say that a false balance is an abomination to the Most High. All right, so you giving out money, but then you purposely to poor countries putting out high interest rates, which is basically the same thing what Babylon is doing. All right, because you are copying them and thinking you're gonna be, as they decline, that you're gonna be in their spot in a new age, a new empire. All right, the new world order. No, all right. Yahweh Shah is coming to rule and take all put many crowns upon his heads, conquering and conqueror and conquering. All right. So it's going to the Israelites. So all of these people have a vain, the heathens rage, right? They're having a vain thought to think that they would even be in a situation doing the same exact thing of what's going to get Babylon destroyed. You know what I mean? So I'll read a little bit of the second Esdras again to get to the point, and we'll close it out. This is second Esdras chapter 15, verse 46. And thou, Asia, that art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person. Woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. See? Therefore, saith the Most High, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death. And the glory of thy power shall be dried up as a flower, when the heat shall arise that is sent over thee. Thou shalt be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one chastised with wounds, so that the mighty and lovers shall not be able to receive thee. All right. So, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to continue to go on, but so China is still going to be judged, and it's not going to. Moab is the Most High's wash pot. All right. So there's going to be heavy servitude for the Moabites. You do not have necks. You do not have rulership of the kingdom. All right. Moab is actually, if I'm not mistaken, roughly paraphrasing what the scripture says. All right, hasn't gone through captivity like all the other nations have gone through captivity. All right, so you're going to be at the bottom rung too. I mean, Esau first, but you're going to be the very low in the kingdom. Brakatah Yahweh, Brakatah Yahweh Shan. To the next time, Lord willing, I was edifying to the elect. Shalom.